Welcome to the Church Collective podcast. In this episode, we had the opportunity to talk with Dan and Chelsea from SEU Worship, Southeastern University. Fun fact, I am the academic director for Southeastern University's campus at the Belonging Co. in Nashville. So if you happen to be looking for a college, I would love to connect with you. Go ahead and shoot me a DM over on Instagram. But this is just a fantastic chat with Dan and Chelsea about everything that's going on with SEU Worship. If you haven't listened to their album yet, you want to check it out. But here we go with the Church Collective podcast.
I'm a worship pastor at Southeastern University, and that's what SEU stands for, by the way. And so SEU Worship, so my job is kind of leading worship, helping drive some of the music and creative and touring stuff that we do at SEU.
Yeah.
And we're sort of just excited to talk about Heart Cry and the album, what's happening. And
Yeah.
SEU Worship, if I could just summarize what it is, we are basically a group of staff and students that write songs and record music. And really what we do is we lead worship for our chapel services. That's kind of like the bread and butter of who our group is. And out of that, there's been this overflow of songs and music making. 10 years ago, while I was a college student, we stepped out in faith to try and start releasing original songs, which a few universities and colleges had kind of started to knock on that door, but we went full tilt with it. Like, we're going to do a couple of albums a year, that are just original songs written by the staff and students from our chapel services.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of like the short version of who SE Worship is, and then who I am in relationship to that. And this is Chelsea.
Yeah, I'm Chelsea. I've been a student at SEU at the university for 5 years now. Now I'm getting my master's. And so I'm a graduate assistant with SEU Worship, and kind of been a part of the team, seeing kind of the fruits of the labor of you and of previous pastors for just making that original music come to life and having students' involvement. And but the best part and our favorite part is definitely the chapels week in, week out. It's our student ministry, our community. So yeah, it's a bit about us, SEU Worship. Yeah.
That's cool. I'd love to hear, Dan, if you could speak a little bit, a college with a worship pastor. I'm sure there's a bunch of worship leaders, pastors listening to this saying, I didn't even know that was a field I could look at, like getting hired at. Can you maybe speak to like what was the heart behind like actually having a worship pastor at a chapel for a college?
Oh, sure. Yeah. So a lot of universities have these sort of like chapel experiences, worship experiences, and depending on their culture or the needs of that school, that institution, a lot of times they'll have like a worship director role, and that person's job is to coordinate the worship teams for chapel services and chapel experiences. For me, I graduated here and went straight into full-time vocational ministry, and then basically got a call back to do curricular work. So I came on as like a professor and doing some more graduate studies to sort of kind of build a school for what could be for worship students. That's initially why I came back to Southeastern. And then over time, I just sort of evolved into the worship director role.
Yeah.
And then it's kind of always changing season to season, but per need of the university. But it is funny. Like it's a whole field, and for some people it's academically connected. So some people get into it because it's sort of, like you might be interested in furthering your studies when it comes to worship stuff. But there's also just the practical need of, we need to keep the context of these worship services in higher ed. And this is really important. We need to keep the context of those worship services based in a contemporary reality, because if they start to go a little too traditional or even just a little too academic, then I think we are failing to equip students properly to get out in the field and do the kingdom work.
Right.
We sort of have promised to do them, the service of providing. So I think like when it comes to SEU, Dr. Engel and our leadership team has been so clear about making sure we're empowering students to go into the world, to discover their divine design and go into the world and be kingdom builders, makers, shapers, right? So for us, we keep it super practical. But I know, like, I've gotten to know a handful of worship directors, and there's so many different approaches. There's so many different ways to do it. So I think it's pretty cool, like, as a field, as like an area.
Yeah.
And so I will say, if you're a worship leader and you have a little bit of like a head knowledge, intellectual, or even like academic bent to you, it's a great place to be in, to be sort of in the university worship environment. It's been really,
Totally.
really rewarding. What's your take on that, Chelsea? Like that role?
Yeah, I think it's super unique, and it's not obviously the typical context of a church or a local ministry, because it's students of a certain age group and filtering in and out every 4 years. There's a 4 year turnaround every time. So pastoring is it's kind of a different model
Totally.
than investing in people long term for the long haul. And obviously, that's still in mind, because these people still go on to live lives that you might still be connected to. But in terms of just learning how to really invest and be very intentional to say, okay, these next 4 years,
Right.
how are we investing into these students, and how is this worship experience going to set them up and shape them for the next, however many years of ministry, whether that's vocationally in a church or not. And so I think it's a really unique and cool model of worship ministry, and even pastoral ministry, I'm sure,
Totally.
and create a creative outlet with always young adults. It's very unique. It's very, very unique. But
It's a
yeah,
part. We have a lot of fun.
Yep.
I keep coming back to like the metaphor of a river versus a reservoir. So like a church or a traditional organization that would kind of have or ministry would have this almost like a reservoir feel to it. Like, so the water that flows in is kind of supposed to more or less stay there. Like, you want people to be
Right.
lifers at your church. You want people that start at your church to end up going to your internship program and then maybe coming on staff as your church grows. Like, if you're familiar with, growing churches, like this is a dynamic that's common. And then any of the water that kind of flows out, you really want it to be a little bit more intentional, or ideally it's happening, in health. But at SEU, in the higher ed model, the context is much more like a river.
Right.
Like, you never have the water for long. It's just always intended to be flowing and flowing and flowing.
Exactly.
So the challenge for me and all the leaders here is just to perpetually be into that handing off and that giving over, and giving the keys too early so that the water can keep flowing. So for us, the challenge isn't so much the running water, because the nature of it is that the water is going to keep moving, but how do we make the river wider? Like, how do we bring more people into it, and how do we steward that appropriately
Yep.
in order, according to what God's called us and gifted us to do? So definitely unique, and keeps us on our toes. We have a lot of fun leading in that
It's a
context.
blast. Yeah.
Yeah. Little quiet moment. I'll edit that part out. Listen,
I was actually
Yeah.
thinking about part of what you just said, Dan, which I think is interesting. And I think a lot of churches don't often understand, or maybe they don't. I want to say they don't understand. They don't understand the intentionality behind when it's the river model. There's an in point and there's an out point.
Mhm.
There's a lot of churches that have people that do that. I mean, I think even just my own background, when my wife and I, we were worship pastors for 10 years, and we were near a military base. So like literally 6 months to 18 months, the entire congregation would do like a 50% turnover.
Wow.
So it shaped our whole perspective on not just leading songs, but also leading people, because especially military guys, they come in and they want to serve right away. And you have to find a space for them. You can't be like, well, we have a 6-month waiting program. Then we have a 1 year, like, get to know church, church
Right.
gets to know you. It was like
Yeah.
we had to escalate the process. But I think what was interesting just about what you shared was when the desire is to teach and to invest into not just next generation, but now generation, and then you're willing to create systems and room environment for them to have the opportunity early on, I think it actually gives them a better chance to go deeper. And I think there's an interesting conversation, obviously, Ryan, with you guys with Church Collective, just the environment that you're connecting with different churches and people that are going to be, watching or listening to this, thinking about how could their takeaway be, what can I do to invest into the people? Let's not assume you have them for 10 years or they're lifers. Let's maybe say you have them for a season for whatever reason. So how would you give them your best in the time that you have with them, and maybe don't wait till the end, like lead strong at the front.
Well, it's so good. I mean, that's a great question.
Great
And
question.
the first place that my mind goes to is just holding on to everything like loosely.
Totally.
I think part of, so there's like that scripture that says God owns a cattle on 1,000 hills, which I love ancient metaphors like that. Like, what does that mean? That's crazy, weird image. But I love thinking of the God of abundantly more, right, than we could ask, think, or imagine, like the God who just owns everything and has everything. And we sometimes treat people like he's not the God of 1,000 people on 1,000 hills. He's the God of just like the 2 or 3 you have right now, or the 10 or 12 you have right now. And a lot of us can be so like this with the people and the resources around us. And I just think that there is something true to the stewardship of what God's given you to say, like, actually, I need to hold everything around me with like it's on lease to me. So and I guess what I mean by on lease is like when you lease a car, you still basically drive it like you own it, even though you don't, because you want to return that thing in the best shape possible, unless you're just like a maniac. I don't know, but you want to return that thing in the best shape possible, right? So you don't have to like incur any more extra fees or whatever. And I think that's probably a better way for us to think about stewarding the kingdom of God. Like everything that we have, we're giving on lease. So we should treat it like we own it, but also know that a day is going to come where that thing will ultimately be released. So whether that's people or a position or an area of ministry that you lead, or how about this, like worship leaders, like a style, like a style that you're kind of glued to or that you love, like a flow,
A song.
a song,
Right.
a song. Yeah.
Right.
Oh man, I'm thinking of old worship pastors I had. It's time to hang up some of those songs.
Right.
We all heard a song in our head.
Yeah.
We all
Right
know.
there.
Yeah, no shade, but so I think like that principle is so huge.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's so huge and so true, right? Like I had a convo yesterday. I was thinking about this, that even Christ, God's ministry through Christ was transitional. Like Jesus isn't still walking around on earth right now the same way he came. Like it was for a season, and then the transition was the Holy Spirit, to kind of come through in and through us, right? So I think there's something to that nature of just in the season you have, be intentional with what you have, but knowing that it is that kind of flowing river idea, that we're supposed to be loose-handed with it. And yeah. Totally.
I feel like this context probably is pretty helpful actually for moving on to if staff or students are moving on from here to a vocational ministry role, to not be an insecure leader, that which I'm sure many people have felt in where they feel like God's calling them elsewhere, but they want to be loyal to their church that they've been at for 10 years. And there's something to say about longevity. There's definitely fruitfulness in longevity, and that's not what I'm trying to get at. It's just that everything that we have is again a lease from God, a lending from God,
right?
And so I think it helps to have that mindset of, okay, I'm gonna invest as much as I'm able to right now, as if God has everything else for this person. And I think it's very helpful to raise maybe more secure leaders in a context where things are just naturally coming and going. So I think it's helpful for me, who possibly wants to be in a vocational ministry role later on in life, to not hold preciously to what's not mine, and to people that are not mine, and to things that are not mine, and to really just hear the voice of God in every season, and just be like, I'm going all in right now, and being super intentional and super diligent to make sure that these people are stewarded well right now, and this ministry, whatever it is stewarded well right now. So I think it's really helpful.
Yeah.
I'd love to go back a little bit, like having just a finite amount of time. And Jamie, if you want to jump in on this too, I'd love to know, like, what kind of minimum skill level do you have? Like, what's your audition process look like? Because obviously you can't bring them in, too far one way or the other. Like, there's got to be like, but what's the sweet spot, and what do you do with, and what if somebody's coming in a little under? Do you work with just love to hear your audition process.
Yeah, well, first and foremost, you need to have 2 to 3 years of ribbon twirling experience.
Of course, natural.
So you have the flags
Large
and ribbons.
flags.
Yes.
Right. Assemblies of God College, natural, has to be part of it.
You understand. Finally,
Tambourine. Don't forget the tambourine.
Very much necessity.
Yes.
Yeah, we'll definitely
It
walk you
sounds like
through.
we're poking fun.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, I actually do. This sounds crazy. It's funny like how I used to make fun of that stuff when I was younger, and now I see it and it blesses my heart so
Yeah,
much.
my church still has a flag
Yeah,
ministry. I
I
love
love
those
it.
women
I'm just like, man,
and
it's,
men.
yeah. So I think like when it comes to your question about basically the audition process, um, what's unique about a university is there's just always a huge we probably say no more often than a church would, just
Right.
Yeah.
because we have so many people. We'll have like 150 to 200 per semester audition,
Wow.
and in reality there's like 8, 12 maybe that we kind of move forward in the process. So that gives us the ability to have a really high bar. And then
Yeah.
what we do in so let me talk about the audition process, then I'll talk about some principles we have that kind of like protect it a bit. So we actually have a thing we say where we don't have on team or off team. We just say you're either rotation ready or not. So
Hmm.
SEU worship's a big family and community, and if you're showing up and you're in our worship choir and you're kind of because the worship choir is basically like a walk-on environment, come be a part. It's not too complicated. It's not too technical. So come be a part. Like
So,
everyone's on the team. We're all
totally.
in the team on the family. And it doesn't mean that you're rotation ready though. So rotation ready means you have to hit a couple of sort of bars of excellence.
Yeah.
And I'll talk about the musically, and then Chelsea, you can tag the vocal stuff. But
Yep.
musically, it's can you play to a click track?
Sure.
Now, what's funny about yeah, well, I'll do the first. Can you play to a click track, and are you comfortable using in-ear monitors? And what's
Okay.
funny about those two things is those are almost the click track one is slightly skill related, but they're really more technologically related. Like most of the time, you'll get a student that's really talented, and you realize they've actually just never played to a click track. Like they've
Right.
never played with in ears in. So all they need is a little bit of time doing that, and then they get a chance to be a part of the ministry in the next iteration of it, if that makes sense. So it's those two technical things, and then the skill thing would be being able to memorize the lyrics. I'm sorry, not the lyrics, although that's important too. Memorize the music and the chords and the arrangements.
Yeah.
So those are kind of the 3 bars people have to clear. Can you play to a click track? Are you comfortable using in ears? Are you know kind of can you navigate it? Can you hear yourself? And then the third thing is are you able to play the songs without chord sheets in front of you? And just from memory, including the lead parts, all of that, right? So
Okay.
those are the 3 musical things to clear. And what we found is that those first 2 are really more technical oriented, uh, I mean, around like the technology piece. And all it takes is for us to do a few events to get people kind of the resources they need.
Yeah.
And so we'll do these culture nights, team nights throughout the year that kind of just, they're all calls for everybody. Hey, come be a part. You know, you auditioned for guitar last year. I want you to show up, come play your guitar with our other guitar players, with maybe one of our staff MDs or whatever. And let's see if we can get you learning how to play to a click track. Let's see if we can get you comfortable with in ears. So that's kind of the bar, and then the steps we have to get somebody from rotation ready to not. But you should touch on vocals.
Yeah, and then vocally, we'll have just different rooms of people with staff members, and then a student worship leader, and then an instrumentalist, either an acoustic guitar or a piano. We give students 4 or 5 songs to choose from. We ask them about themselves first, and just try and get to know them, because that's the culture we want to set. Is that you guys are people that we care about first.
Mm-hmm.
And so we'll chat with them, get to know them, and then they'll start singing whatever song that they choose from the 5 sent. Things that we're mostly looking for is definitely preparation is a
Yeah.
huge one. So people can be really talented singers, really, really talented vocalists, and then have to pull up the lyrics for a song, or maybe not come in on time, things like that. Just kind of like an excellence matters. That's like a culture that we want to set as well. Like preparation matters no matter how talented you are.
Right.
So we look at preparation, obviously, just like vocal skill, stuff like that, and then like how we felt like meeting you, like what were you like, how can we see you involved on a team. And the nice thing about kind of the I keep saying culture, but the culture we're setting lately
Mm-hmm.
is that it's not a you're on or you're off type of mentality. It's actually, hey, here's how you can get involved. Maybe you're not rotation ready this semester, but here's how we see you progressing. Start start here. For some people, it's like, hey, you need to be on the worship choir because you are definitely going to be an asset to this team. For some people, it's like, hey, we want you meeting with some of our worship pastors in these coming semesters so that we can get you growing and on to rotation within the following, however long is seen fit. And for some people, it's on rotation right away, and that's on chapels and tours. But I think that's a really cool thing about SEU Worship is that, again, like everyone's part of the fam, everyone's part of the team, and there's always ways to grow. If you want to grow musically, there's space for that. If you want to grow individually, pastorally, there's space for that. So yeah, there's space for that growth.
And I'll add this too as like a technical piece. So like after all that is said and done, the rotation ready, there's like another layer deeper, what we would call like a student leadership opportunity.
You're right.
Which you have to go through an interview process, and that's a scholarship position. So I think we have, I think the number's like 30 of those.
Yeah, 30. I think.
Yeah, so there's like 30 of those students. So those would be like our best drummer is a student leader scholarship, But not only do they play well and their spirits right, they show leadership skills because they have
100%.
to lead other drummers, other musicians, and then also like the academic piece is big on that front as well.
Yeah.
So all those things kind of have to be in the right standing to get into that scholarship spot. So it's kind of tiered that way, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
No, I was just thinking about, because I think what I love about just SEU as a whole is this internal wiring for, you mentioned discovering your divine design, and then kind of the other part of that is developing. And so we have the discoverers, we have the developers, and I think when you find the synergy of both, so in this mix, you've got people that are coming in, they're in this process of still discovering, but then they're also helping others to develop. And I know the heart behind it, just because obviously being a part of SEU, is how Chapel was birthed out of this kind of like, almost like it wasn't some clever plan. It wasn't like, oh, we're going to build a worship movement, we're going to make this thing happen, and 10 years from now we'll be able to be celebrating these accolades and awards. It was like this deep heart thing to just worship the Lord, right? And I forget what the small chapel that's in the other building, just some of the history. But I think what I love at this juncture for me to be involved too is hearing how it started with this desire just for the presence of the Lord and heart of worship. Now it's evolved into something that's training, teaching, equipping, giving students opportunities. You guys have put framework in place to do that, but there's still that heart piece. And it was a phrase that I heard back in April or May, was this idea that the experience is from the chapel to the classroom. So how it starts in the presence with the Lord, and then it works its way out into the rest of it. But I just talk a little bit about how you guys maybe steward, or even the idea of the students are coming in and they're being trained and taught on biblical literacy, even for worship, how the emphasis is on learning or being deep in the word before they actually learn the words of the song. Like, talk about just the whole process for that.
So you the questions about biblical literacy with songwriting, you're saying?
Maybe the process of like students, because they're going deeper with Jesus, and then they're also going deeper in their skill. But how you guys have created the environment where you have all the technical and kind of like raise the bar, but also there's the spiritual investment so that their lives are going deeper into the word.
Right.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because I was thinking that sometimes we feel a pressure, like as we raise the technical bar, what does that mean for the spiritual climate?
Sure.
And I will say what we've discovered is when you raise the technical bar, what you're really doing is you're inviting people either closer into relationship with you and closer into kind of those coaching conversations. And whenever that starts to happen, you get a better look into someone's character. And in raising the technical bar, we've actually been able to it opens up way more pastoral opportunities, which is something that I would have thought as like non-related. But I have found in like my worship leadership, my worship pastoring, that's actually related. That somehow in raising the technical bar, it opens up an opportunity for me to have a lot more pastoral conversations and coaching moments, and telling people how I can help them, and coaching people and how I can help them improve. And for us, the spiritual piece is really, it really comes down to like just authenticity.
Yes.
Like we have a lot of wiggle room for people when it comes to their spiritual walk and that grace we can give them, so long as we can sense and know within our context of knowing them, relationship to them. Are you authentically seeking the presence of God? Are you authentically depending on him to sort of speak to your life, give you direction for the future? And again, the only real way you can vet that stuff is by knowing people. So
Very true.
we spend a lot of time getting to know our students. Like our office, we've it's been remarked upon about our office about just how social it is. But it's because we create an environment for students just to come in and hang out and be around.
Yeah.
And what better way to get to know people's heart and what they're after? How that translates into the songwriting, or anything you want to add on that, Chelsea? Before
Yeah, no, I think you hit it. Like just getting to know students, I think is so helpful for this age range of people too,
yeah.
because it's not, it's maybe less, it's more of an insecurity, but finding security and wanting to be vulnerable, but not knowing how to do that. That kind of age range of like 18 to 20 something year olds.
Right. Yeah.
So it's like, hey, that's okay. Like we're gonna kind of foster all of these things with you, and to just have a space for people to be open, to be authentic, to be vulnerable. Like logistically, even we'll have team leaders do team hangs every week, like every semester, like twice a semester, and meet with all of the students on their team, and having staff intentionally meet with students, meet with student leaders, check-ins, things like that is how we relationally invest. And I think that's a very important aspect too, especially this age range of people, is how you get the teaching, which is I mean everyone, but how you kind of are able to correct, are able to be like, this is God's word, this is what it says, is by creating that avenue of relationship first.
Yep.
So yeah.
Totally. So, and then I think like songwriting for us, it just comes out of that stuff.
Totally.
I was trying to think like we tend to be really hyper intentional. We tend to be hyper intentional and hyper systematic about our approach to whatever. And I think like when it comes to songwriting and the biblical part of it, we have more intentionality on the back end of that. So what I did for our Heart Cry record is there's 2 or 3 songs that, if there was a biblical or theological question, I actually sent it to some of our theology faculty and our campus pastor here to let them kind of air out and land on some changes. And that ended up being a really healthy way to kind of approach some of the issues that I thought we were kind of coming across. But that was more a back end thing. I think on the front end, the way that the biblical literacy and theology piece comes into play is just in us talking about what God's doing in our hearts and in our lives. And then from there, we start to sing about it and start to just talk about it. And it's almost that simple. There's not much more to it.
Yeah.
So like when you're, again, like if you have a relationship with people and you're like authentically talking about what God's doing, then it becomes really easy.
Yes.
To write songs with each other.
Yes.
Just talk about, this is what God does. This is what he wants to do. This is what he's doing.
100%.
And so, yeah.
Yeah, I feel like the best songs and songwriting don't come when people come into a room and they're like, I have this great idea and this is going to be great. It comes when people come in and they feel like themselves. Mm-hmm. Like they feel like they can throw out ideas and they can be like, this is what I've been going through. This is what I've been feeling. And that, again, that aspect of songwriting comes through relationship with others. And so I think that's like a really unique, cool environment. It's not just like these people who are like, yeah, I know what I'm doing and this is a cool idea for a song. Let's just make it. It's like, no, I feel myself around these people. And so I can share openly about what I feel like God's doing, what ideas God's placing in my heart, and how I feel like songs can affect our community. So
yes.
Yeah.
To jump a little bit in on the album itself, I'm just looking at listening to the song Monday Morning Faith. It seems like especially for like younger people, it feels like that's like a continual thought. It's like, I want to take this past just a weekend. which I guess, yeah, there's no Christian that would disagree with that. But
Sure.
is there like a sense of like an urgency for it as like a younger person? Like, do you feel, I just basically interested, where do you think the church is going and worship and like, yeah, talk
Mm,
a little bit to that.
it's a really good question. I think for us, when we were writing that, that was a song that originally came with myself and other students, and exploring that idea. And that was like a very, that was something that was on all of our hearts, that we felt like God wasn't just like calling the church to, but convicting us about and calling us to a holy standard, of course, with grace and with like God's, as the word says, his goodness leads us to repentance. And
Right.
so it's his goodness that led us there. But I think, um, I don't know. I think this generation maybe has been interpreted as needing a ton of things in order to see a real thing.
Yeah, sure.
Needing a bunch of creative elements or a bunch of, intros that are fun and exciting so that we can pay attention long enough to see the real thing. But in reality, like people our age and younger, like they just want something real.
Real, yeah.
They
Yeah.
literally just want something real. And so, I mean, Monday Morning Faith kind of comes out of that of like, like we don't need, I don't need to tell you that like, um, I don't know. I don't need to tell you an anecdote in order to get you to know that there you need peace and joy and the goodness of a real God.
Right.
And that comes, I think people are ready to be called to holiness, especially my age.
Right.
They're ready to be to experience how does this become real in my life. And it's not just on a Sunday, and it's not just on a worship night, although those things are totally godly and totally amazing to be communally involved. But yeah, I think it's just like, I don't know, the misconception of young people needing things to get into the presence of God. It's just like, no, they just
Yeah.
want it. Like we just want it.
It's so true.
And so
Yeah.
so that teaching of like it's every single day, then that's like a teaching that people want actually. Like that our souls are craving. It's not just like, oh, this stinks, like this
Right.
this is so annoying,
Yeah.
you know?
No, that's so good. I mean, if I was gonna go out on the limb, just to take a total like guess, I think I I, what's fun about like me and Chelsea's dynamic is I'm a millennial, pastor, worship leader, and then she's like Gen Z. So we're like all the staff in the office were always talking about like the differences and
Right.
what it was like for me to be coming up as a worship leader. And one of the things we keep kind of I keep coming back to is just technology. Like I constantly forget that I have a computer at my disposal, basically in my hand.
Right.
Like to me, a phone is still just for texting and calling. Like I don't know if you guys struggle. I just perpetually forget that like I can make videos with it. I can do
Right.
like it's not on the forefront of my mind. Like of course I know, because I'm not like, on Mars.
You're like,
Like,
I'm
but I
hip. I'm
know.
with it.
I'm with it.
I was like, Ryan, what
Yeah.
generation are we, Ryan? If we got like millennial Gen Z, I don't even know what I am.
I know I'm the fringe of a millennial, like
I
a
was gonna say you guys should might be in the
Gen X
middle.
millennial. Yeah, like right
Millennial
before.
curve
Yeah.
there.
I'm 47. I don't know what that means. All I know is
You're like
feel
full
actually-
Gen
I feel
X. Yeah.
I feel encouraged by this moment because I'm like, I know my phone is for more than like texting and phone calls. And I've done a couple of videos and I've even created some like ideas and like songs and stuff that are
Yeah,
on
there you
there.
go.
Then there's days where I'm like, can I just throw this thing out the window and go back to like the flip phone? So
Right.
Exactly. I miss my flip
But-
phone. R.I.P. to the flip phone. But I guess the point I'm trying to make is like for Gen Z, there's this sense of like, oh, the technology doesn't have to be at a computer. It's actually like always available. Like I don't have to go get a camera to make something. It's just right here. And
Yeah.
they're,
Yeah.
like literally out of nowhere, like I'll just be writing an email and I'll look up and my office is full of people with cameras out. It's just like at any moment they can make something.
Right.
And if you translate that to like our spirituality, I do think there is this propensity generationally for us to be like, well, when we come together as a church, or just in general, this is the propensity of the church. When we come together as a church, that's the holy time. Like that's the sacred time.
Yes.
And for Gen Z to say like, well, I can make anything whenever I want, create anything whenever I want. So why can't we also just see God move whenever we want?
Totally.
Like I know that might be a bit of a leap, but I just think like there's this sort of creative energy to them. It's like, no, let's see God now. Let's go for it and see God move now. That I find really
don't wait till
inspiring.
Sunday.
Yeah. I don't have to wait till Sunday. Like,
Yeah.
and it's really energizing and inspiring. And then even in like the pastoral conversations, it's like, can you pray for me now? Can we pray for that now? Can we talk about that now? Like, I don't want to wait for the formal occasion to have that moment, that awakening. Let's do it right now. And I think, I think that's something that I've observed as well about our college students and younger people that work at SEU, is there's an urgency in the present. There's an urgency in the present to see God move, as opposed to waiting for it for another time.
There's a running joke at this point where it's like, oh, I'll pray for you, and it's like, no, pray now, right? I'm like, we've all seen that meme at some point,
Right.
But
exactly.
What
actually do it, not just say you're going to do it.
Right.
I'd love to hear, what would you say to the pastor that's listening to this that really wants his church to have more young people? So like they want to be more real, but like, you got any like practical steps towards them? Maybe obviously they don't need to buy all the lights, I guess, but what would you tell that pastor that wants more young people at his church?
Throw out the skinny jeans. I'm just kidding.
Do it.
Sacrilege. I'm still rocking my skinny jeans.
I have a few things I want to say, but I'm really curious to hear what Chelsea is about to say.
Yeah, come on, Chelsea, bring us home. Do something awesome.
You need the fog. You need the lights. You need. I'm kidding.
Check.
I'm kidding.
Okay. Is that as in like the smoke or the fear of God? Which fog are we talking about here?
The smoke.
Shekinah
The
glory.
smoke.
Yeah.
No.
Or is it you have to have the right merch? You have to have the right clothing brand.
Right. You need the merch.
You need the right haircut.
Yep. Yeah. Right haircut. No, I feel like something that I think brings in young people. First of all, again, it's literally, first of all, speaking the word of God. I promise you that will attract people. Like it just will. Like something real. If you're really pursuing the presence of Jesus, I'm telling you, we want it. Like everyone wants it. It's not like formulaic in that you have to make this message for a young audience in like bringing up some like hip phrase or something. Although it might help, like, you stay up to date. But I think like, first of all, just preaching the word, like, I think is so important. I think something maybe practically for like your volunteers, the people who want to get involved in your church, just create open space for maybe new positions to arise, for like creative outlets, because again, like Dan was saying, there's so many opportunities for us to create all the time. And so just being open that you don't even have a position yet for what this young person can do in your church, that you might not even have a role that is correctly labeled out right now, that they could actually fill and be an asset to your church community. So I think like leaving room for creative outlets is going to be so helpful in just making someone feel a part of their community for their authentic selves. And that might look like photography, social media, videography, or it could look like, I want to, just as far as raising up young people, like I want to see what pastoring is like, do you have people that are pastoring others through their creative giftings, and whether that's worship leadership, pastoral leadership, whether that's business-minded young people, whether that's creative young people. I think just creating space for them to have, their creative or not even creative outlets, they're just outlets and passions and things that God has gifted them in. Can those be stewarded at your church?
Yeah, exactly. I totally agree.
That's great.
I think that's a great answer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say what we do is we really just give all of our college students the keys too early.
Exactly.
We're just like, we're gonna give you this opportunity way too early, and we're gonna love on you so hard and just coach you and be available to you. And this is the thing is like, even when I'm coaching somebody though, I really have learned for Gen Z specifically, if you want to create some resonance in their life, I've really learned that I'm not going to coach in with an air of you need my coaching. I'm going to do it from an air of you're doing a great job. Just want to encourage you. And I want to be a voice of just getting your back, loving on you. And by the way, if you need help, I'm here.
Yeah.
And that's been way more effective to let them kind of lead what they need in those coaching moments. The most important thing is just getting them involved, like letting them actually participate, design
Totally.
things, make things, handle the worship leading moments, handle the stage moments, and you can always create safe pockets in a worship set to
Totally.
include somebody. And you can always get safe pockets on your team to get somebody involved. But just getting them involved, I think we always are trying to have a kind of bar we want cleared before someone can drive our social media or do whatever.
Right.
But I just think, now it's like a full circle. We're coming back to how this conversation started. Just don't hold that stuff too precious. Just
Totally.
let someone take a crack at it. And
Yeah.
I think you'll see a lot of fruit in reaching the next generation doing that.
Yeah. I mean, that's biblical, right? Like Paul is telling Timothy, don't let people look down on you because you're young. So there absolutely must have been an element there that he was sending them off. And
Right.
yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah,
Right.
I
exactly.
think the phrase actually, Dan, that you just used, but we give them the keys way too early. Like legitimately, I wish that churches as a whole would adopt that mindset.
Yeah.
Like just do it before it makes sense, before it's too early. Because to me, it's like, and this is just some of the last 20 years, just my experience. A lot of times church would hold back on allowing people opportunity because they were waiting for spiritual maturity or the like the evidence of it. I'm like, well, hold on a second. What about spiritual maturity in your leadership? Are you creating a platform mindset where this is the prize to get on this stage? Or are you recognizing that there are stages in people's lives that you have the ability to lead and to help them grow in their own maturity for themselves, not because it allows them this thing that's like we herald up here. And I just wonder like what it would look like. And Ryan, you probably know just from Church Collective and just the span of who you guys get to talk to. This is actually maybe a question for you, Ryan, just to spin the podcast back on you. What would it look like if the church did that? What if we adopted the mindset of giving the keys too early, knowing that it's going to take a little bit, that you can't like foolishly, but almost lower this, whatever the person, I mean, I've seen it so many times. You go and it's like, oh, they get to be on stage.
Right.
When in reality, it's talent will get you there, but character won't keep you there. But if character is the thing that's being developed, whether you're on it or off of it, doesn't matter. So question is, what would it look like if the church was to be willing to actually give the key sooner, which also means giving it to people that are younger, and then create the environment for them to, I always use this principle of like fail fast, fail hard, fail many times, but fail forward, so that you're constantly growing and you're learning it. And on the balance of that is this principle of recovery rates. We talk about a lot when we do trainings with like team or staff or people. It's like recovery rate is your ability to get back to where you were in recovery to what you just experienced.
Right.
So if we preface this idea for church, what would that look like? And what would it change for our whole context of just Christianity? Ryan, you get to figure out what to do.
Well, I mean, honestly, I was thinking like Chelsea was talking about like people want real. And I mean, I've got 20 years of, quote unquote mega church. I think what do you define it by, like 1,000 people at a church or not? Like I've got some of that experience. And it does seem like there's this bar where if you want to be a part of our worship ministry, you have to be musically at a quality that is like a better product. But I know just personally, I used to name them worship mulligans, where we would try again, like the times where we were leading worship and made horrible mistakes where we'd fall off the track or something, we would stop. But like we would pick it back up and start singing. And then always the room would be so much more into it and so much more engaged in the worship. So I wonder if, I mean, and this is a dangerous slope to go down, like, but how do you find that level of like allowing for more mistakes, I think, and being comfortable with more mistakes and being comfortable with people on the stage rather than the quality that they bring, which, dangerous step, I guess. But yeah,
it's something that I've been thinking about a lot is that one of the primary roles of a worship leader is to be both in charge of creating a transcendent moment with God and being relatable.
Yeah.
And it's like kind of paradoxical that you have to kind of find a way to relate to people, let them feel warm. And that's exactly what you're talking about, Ryan.
Totally.
And to me, is like, yeah, hey, how do I find a way without having to like make a mistake and be like, whoops, we made a mistake.
Right.
How do I
Like
find
plan
a
the
way?
mistake.
Yeah, exactly. Guys, we're gonna this week is gonna be a tracks mistake we're gonna make.
Song 2.
Song 2 tracks mistakes.
Yeah.
It's gonna be great. People are gonna really connect with that.
Yeah.
Awkward transition out of the quiet moment to the
Right.
welcome
Yeah,
spot where we
Purposefully.
go into
Yeah.
a video announcements. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the point
So-
is you got to find a way to relate to people, and you can only do that by getting authentic, and then that makes the moments of, the transcendent moments of getting people into the presence of God, acknowledging His goodness, acknowledging His presence, and
Right.
acknowledging Him as Lord over the room and our lives and the world.
Mhm.
That, it's just you have to have that relatable piece to get there and make that
Yeah.
effective. And then, in fact, the lordship piece makes that part even more dynamic and
Yep.
engaging and grace oriented.
Yep.
So
I wish I had the
Cool.
reference, but like, was it not many of you should think so highly of yourselves? Like that passage, I guess that's for church leaders, especially like evangelical American churches. Like I do think we are producing far too much of a show versus just believers coming
Yeah.
together and gathering. And I think like the more we can pick at that a little bit, I think would make a big difference too. But
We put a lot of emphasis on our own thoughts being more important than they actually are too.
Yeah.
The Bible talks about God says, "My thoughts are not yours." It's like, oh yeah, good point. Like
Right.
we think that where we're at and what we're doing and our thing is the most, or it's the best, or it's the whatever, and then God's like, "That's cool, good start."
Totally.
And He's also like, He's watching us grow through that process as well. Ryan, I don't know what the format normally is for this, but I'm dying to ask a couple of questions. Like, I want to know.
Yeah,
So
go for it.
I'm gonna ask both Dan and then Chelsea. Dan, favorite song on Heart Cry?
Mm.
no, don't do this to
Oh my
me.
gosh.
My favorite song is just it's very, very personal. I wrote this song called People Get Ready. And if that sounds familiar, it's because I ripped off an old song, and inspiration of it. We used to sing that song called People Get Ready. I think it's called that.
Yeah.
Uh,
Jesus
back
is
in the
coming
day.
soon. Yeah.
That's it. Yep. And
Yep.
and I like woke up one morning and I was thinking about how like I got sad that I have a 2-year-old that my kid would never like hear that song and then wouldn't have that. We just sang so much about Jesus coming back in my church
Yeah.
growing up. I grew up in a small Pentecostal church. And so I got really motivated to like finish a song idea about this idea of like we got to get ready because Jesus is coming. Like when you have guests coming over your house, like you get ready.
Right.
And we don't have like I don't know. There's something about that got me really energized to write that song, and so I love every element of it. I love how it sounds and the writing of it. So it's that's probably my favorite song. But it may not be the
Cool.
best song on the record, but it's my personal favorite.
No, it's the best.
Yeah.
Chelsea, how about you?
Okay, I would have to say either funny, but Pour It Out is, I think, my favorite song
song,
off
yes.
of the album. And it's
I'm with
because-
you on that one.
Yes, it's because, I mean, the whole song is so great, but literally every time it's saying, with humble hearts we turn away from our sin. Like I cry like every
Wow.
time I hear it because I'm like, I've never heard a song say that, and it leads me to repentance every time. I'm like,
Wow.
oh my gosh, with a repentant heart I turn away from my sin.
Yep.
I don't know why it gets me every time. And I think musically it's just so good. Dylan Dames, oh my gosh,
What a guy.
what a guy.
So good.
He leads that song and he leads that song. You know what I mean?
He leads
And
that
he
song.
It
leads.
leads. Yeah, that's so good. So I question, just following up from that, and then Ryan, you can either cut me off or eject
Ah.
me out of the whatever you want to do.
Yeah, go for it.
Well, there's two parts. One is, do you guys record or track any of it live throughout the year, and then you're picking up moments, or do you set time aside to go like, okay, we're going to go record for the purpose of producing the album? What's the vibe on that?
Yes. That's the answer. Yes.
Yes to both.
Yes. You could speak on that. too.
Okay. We're just now experimenting more and more with capturing moments live that we could maybe put out there, but we've definitely had a hyper intentionality. I mean, we're a student-based ministry, so one of my favorite
Yeah.
things to do is when a guest comes into town and wants to come tour what we have, and I'm like, here's our 2 staff people and students, and they're just like, what? you're so small. And I'm like, yeah, we're just small and mighty. Like,
Right.
but we are just a homegrown, love Jesus. And so we really have to put intentionality around the recording pieces because we're so student oriented, we don't always have that. Everything's so developmental. So we don't have that high production thing at every juncture, if that makes sense.
Sure.
So we
Yeah.
have to kind of create a lot of intention around those moments. I think the takeaway for like your everyday church leader is that even in any context you have, you can actually create high intentionality around a captured moment, like whether that's once a year or once a quarter. And so for us right now, we're kind of going project to project. What do we want to record next? But the goal is for us to get into our monthly nights of worship, that those are recorded, and then that we could actually use those for albums or what have you as time goes on. So
No, that's good. I love that you shared that. Obviously, Ryan and I, we both go to the Belonging in Nashville, which is unfair because they just record everything all the time, and the quality and the caliber of your musicianship that's there. I know part of their heart is like they take what they've already done and they kind of tweak and finish. And I think what that does is it can set up for other churches two things. Now they have to try to become something that they're not. It's not within their mandate or with what God has called them to do. Or they're like, well, we just want to tackle it at all. We don't know how to go there. And I remember, like, even for us, probably 10 years ago, we were leading worship. There was this thing about going away and recording a worship album somewhere else that wasn't authentic. And I'm like, well, hang on a second. The purpose of Sunday and in the context of like worship teams and worship team development is to give people the chance to engage and be a part of something, versus you've made an elite group of people, that are like special.
Right.
So for us, like the weekend, the day, and even with the context of SEU, it's like the point is to give people the opportunity to experience more than what they've experienced before, to grow in the calling that's on their life, to discover, to develop all the things that God's wiring within them. And then you go away and go, okay, but now for this is the goal, this is the target. And even just as an encouragement to just churches as a whole, like if maybe you're not supposed to be recording or writing and releasing albums, maybe the call that's on your house is to take what is happening and to develop people within that. If it is part of your call, then don't try to don't bite off more than you can chew, right? Like start with the most authentic. And if part of it is writing like one song and you go away and you have a little, well, at this point you can practically do everything on your phone, and creating something that's out of there, versus this disingenuous kind of like we over manufactured, like we went into a studio, we wrote a song, it was poorly produced, badly mixed, we got a worship song, and you're like, and it's really painful to listen to. Yeah, I don't know if I had a question. I think I was just chewing on the idea of, because I'm talking out loud, I'm like, ooh, squirrel. The principle of creating an environment for you to capture the authentic moments, but also know that you can go into a studio or a space when you're recording, and that's also capturing an authentic moment. It's like spontaneous worship versus prophetic. Sometimes spontaneous is still planned. It's still like you kind of have an idea of where you're going. Prophetic is who knows what's going to happen, and we're all hanging on for dear life. And that one of those does actually require musicianship that can handle the moment. The other can be a moment that you've stewarded well and that you've developed your way through. But I don't want to get off on a different topic. So second question, which was the first one, and then I promise I'll stop. Funniest or awkward moment in recording Heart Cry, like something that stands out where you all just like almost fell apart laughing, or you just had to look at each other and go, we can't take ourselves seriously anymore.
We gotta talk about Monday Morning Faith.
Oh, yeah. Do you want to talk about that?
When we recorded Monday Morning Faith, so what's cool about Heart Cry is it is all live.
Yes.
But whenever we ran into a hiccup where it's like, we would just pull something from rehearsals and use that. And then, so we spent a lot of time in the studio kind of establishing what we wanted parts to sound like, all of that. And it is actually live, which is really fun for us because we used to do a lot of like overdubbing stuff, but it was important to me on this project. We kept it hyper live. So very cool, nerve wracking, energizing, super fun. And one of the fun parts about that is Monday Morning Faith is literally just piano and vocal
vocals
for like 2 minutes. It's like just super simple. And in the end, like the verse one, right out of verse one into chorus one, the notes, dun, 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 it was like the wrong note, just like so bad. It was so bad, and it took every
shout out to our keys player.
We love you, Tiago.
We love you, Tiago.
It took every ounce of like self-discipline not to turn around and just look at him. But as soon as the song was over, I looked at him and he's just like, I'm so sorry.
I know.
And we probably should have re-recorded it, but we ended up just pulling stuff from rehearsals, and we got it exactly where we needed it to be
Yeah.
for that. Because like 2-second
amazing.
moment.
Yeah.
But that was pretty funny.
Yeah.
Yeah. The praise party stuff was super fun too. Just people
Very
jumping around.
fun.
Yeah. Does anything else stand out
Mosh
for you?
pit. I'm trying to think. I feel like we are always having a blast.
Yeah.
So, like, I'm trying to think of specific funny moments. I think you hit it for what I was thinking.
Yes,
Was
okay.
that recording?
It's tough to beat.
Yeah, it is tough to beat.
Love it.
but why not?
Where is there anywhere like are you guys doing any kind of touring or whatever? Like how do people keep up with you?
Oh, are we?
Always.
We're not. No.
You got to
No,
come to
so we do
Lakeland.
a lot of like we honestly do a lot of touring, but it's always like one-off, so we don't do routed ticketing events as much.
Okay.
We are working on a few of those. That'll be cool. If you're
Sure.
interested in seeing us tour, just hang on our Instagram and you'll see we'll post random places
See where
that
you're
we're
at. Yeah.
Yeah, because we're at conferences and like especially like youth and young adult stuff. A lot of that. Yeah, we do a lot of that stuff.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Cool.
And if anybody
Well-
wants to invite you guys out to come tour
You're
or
able to.
come, you can do that too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you can hit us up on Instagram or just go straight to SEUworship.com and get the information you need.
Yep.
Thanks so much for listening to this week's episode. As always, just find us wherever you are on social. Shoot us a DM. We love connecting with people. See you later.